From Ryobi to Wen to Bow, we're going all over the place today with 4 incredible tools that I just got from my shop. From affordable quality alternatives to tools with exceptional features, I can't wait to take a deep dive into these 4 items. So every once in a while, I begin to accumulate a backlog of tools that I get for myself that I can't put in a tight little bundle for a video. And I try to hold off on opening these tools, but I can only go so long. We all know that. So let's start to take a look at these 4 tools and see if any of them interest you. So this first tool we're going to take a look at, I've had for almost 8 months, as I purchased it in August of 2024. And I've heard a lot of good things about this woodworking accessory, but I just don't believe it, so I'm hoping to be proved wrong. So let's not waste any more time and see if this thing lives up to its reputation. This is the Woodowl Overdrive Boring Kit. Let's check it out. Surprisingly enough, I actually have an owl that visits my loft, so this thing might fit right in. You know, that reminds me of the last Super Bowl party I went to. I misread the invitation. When I showed up with the finest owl this side of the Mississippi, it got a little awkward. So these Woodowl bits can be purchased in a number of ways. You can either buy the bits individually or get a 3-piece set like I did. And the 3-piece set that I chose to go with is the 5/8, 3/4, and 1-inch diameter set. So what's the purpose of this set? Well, in some respects, they're intended to be used in the same fashion that you would use a Forstner bit set. But if we compare the design of a Forstner bit versus the Woodowl, you can see they're quite different. One of the first things you'll notice is the length of the Woodowl, coming in at 6.5 inches versus a Forstner bit at 3.5. Another major difference that you'll notice is the head of the bit, with the Woodowl having a head that's 3 inches long versus a Forstner bit at 1/2 inch. And the final major difference is at the end of the shaft, as you'll notice the Woodowl has a socket adapter and the Forstner bit is just round. And one of the main reasons for this difference is the Woodowl's designed specifically for handheld drills versus a drill press. Now, even though these bits have a lot of differences, there is one main similarity, and that's that they're both brad point bits, which is excellent for accuracy. Now, one of the nice things about having a longer head is it allows it to clear out all the waste material as you're boring your hole, making this bit a true boring bit. Now, the construction of the Woodowl bit is made of a very durable material, as it's got an induction hardened steel construction and precise ground cutting edges for durability and accuracy. Now, all these features are great, but let's talk about the real reason why I got this tool, as there's 2 major features that this Woodowl set claims it has. Now, with the first feature, I don't have the time or the patience to test, as it claims its ultra-efficient drilling can extend the battery life on your cordless drills by as much as 35%. And that's great, but by far the biggest reason I got this bit is its claims that it reduces blowout. You know what I'm talking about. It's that frustrating blowout that you can get with a Forstner bit when you don't have your wood supported. So let's put these bits' claims to the test and do a little test. Since I got a 3-piece set, I've gone ahead and pulled my 5/8, 3/4, and 1-inch diameter Forstner bits. Next, I've got a scrap piece of plywood that I've labeled as Forstner bits. And I've got this 3/4 inch plywood secured to my tabletop with a screw clamp. So let's go down the line and drill out a hole with each one of those 3-size Forstner bits on this scrap piece of plywood. And we'll go from the smallest to larger bit, starting out with the 5/8 inch bit. And I'm applying the same amount of pressure to the drill in all 3 of these scenarios. Well, that was a considerable amount of blowout. Now let's try the 3/4 inch. And that was definitely not any better. Now let's try the 1 inch. And if we take a look at the holes, you can see the results are very similar. Each one of these has major blowout and has damaged the wood on the other side. But let's give the Woodowl a shot with another piece of plywood. So with the Woodowl plywood secured to the tabletop in the same fashion, we can begin with a 5/8 inch bit. And those results are quite different than what we got with that Forstner bit. A nice, crisp, clean hole. Now let's try that 3/4 inch bit. And those results are just as impressive as the first hole. Now let's try the 1 inch bit. And that truly is amazing. All 3 of these holes are just about as clean as you can get. And this is one of those tests where the results absolutely speak for themselves. Just look at the results we got with the Forstner bits versus the Woodowl bits. And not only do those Woodowl holes look great, but there's also a significant difference in the speed at which you can bore out a hole with the Woodowl versus a Forstner bit. As with its significant helical design, it really clears out all that waste and bores right through that wood. Well, I'm super happy to have these out of the packaging and in use in my shop, but we've got more items to take a look at. Let's move on to our second item. So our second item is once again another item that I've been holding on to for a while, as I actually purchased it once again in August of 2024. And it's made by a brand that I've had a lot of experience with. From push sticks to featherboards, Bow makes some great products. So let's get into our next bow product, which is hopefully just as innovative as their others. Speaking of bows, that reminds me of a trick I learned last week in Kentucky. I can now swallow a rope and have it come out the other end in a bow. I shit you not. So this is the Bow Products GP5 Guide Pro. Let's check it out. So this is a product that's got quite a bit of flexibility. Inside the box, you're going to get the Guide Pro itself, along with some hex keys and some miter cams. And one of the hex keys can be used to switch out those miter cams, either the 15mm, the 5/8, or you can keep the 3/4 inch miter cam. Since I have a 3/4 inch miter slot, I'm going to keep my 3/4 inch miter cam installed. But what is a miter cam? Well, let's go over to the bandsaw and talk about it. So the mitered cam is attached to the base of the Guide Pro. And if we look at the shape of it, you can see it's in the shape of an oval. This allows it to slide into your miter slot, and once torque's applied, it locks it into place. Now that we understand the miter cam, let's take a look at the Guide Pro itself. The first thing that you'll notice is it's got a firm but flexible silicone fin that's made out of the same material that you see with the Bow featherboard or the push sticks. And this fin has a height of 6 inches, which can really help secure your workpiece. Now you probably noticed earlier that I was able to remove the Guide Pro from the base. Let me show you how that's done. If we look at the top of the Guide Pro, you'll see there's a little lever. If we open that lever, we can easily remove the Guide Pro from the base. In the same fashion, if we want to secure the Guide Pro to the base, we simply slide it onto the base and depress the lever. And it's this adjustability and flexibility that really make this an excellent tool to use in combination with your bandsaw for resawing. If we look at the base of the Guide Pro, you'll also notice there's some measurements, with imperial on one side and metric on the other. This allows you to quickly and accurately make adjustments to the featherboard once you've cut away material. But the more common use for these measurements on the base are used to calibrate your bandsaw. Not only can this base be used as a square to square up your fence, but it can also be used to make micro adjustments between your fence and your blade. You also may have noticed the little knob right next to that latch. This allows you to get even more support by adding a 4-inch extension, which is sold separately. So let's resaw a board and I'll show you exactly how this works. First up, we'll place the base into the miter slot, and then we can take the Guide Pro and slide it into the base. Once we have our Guide Pro in place, we'll grab a piece of wood that we want to resaw. Now that we have our wood, we can place it in between the fence and the Guide Pro and apply the amount of pressure that we want and lock it into place. And with everything locked into place, you can see how it gives complete and total vertical support to your entire wood. So let's do a quick test cut and see if we can resaw this wood. And just like that, we're not only able to resaw our wood, but even cut our wood thin enough for veneers. Now, although this Guide Pro will be primarily used at the bandsaw, you can also use it at the table saw. Since my miter slot for my table saw is also 3/4 of an inch, I can slide it in, lock it into place, and give support to larger pieces of wood, just like I do with the featherboard. And with the fin's flexibility, it can really accommodate any shape wood. Well, once again, a pretty impressive safety accessory from Bow, and I'm very pleased with both tools we've taken a look at so far. But we've got 2 more items to take a look at today. Before we move on to our third, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, be sure to check out my website, FlynnDoggWoodwork.com. There you can find all sorts of fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. And if you're interested in any of the tools we're taking a look at today, I'll leave links in the description below so that you can go check them out for yourself. Lastly, if you'd like to support the channel, check out my channel memberships. There you can get early access to all my videos as well as 1 member video a week. Well, now that we got the bills paid, let's move on to our third item. So luckily our next item is an item I just got last week, so I haven't had to wait around to open this thing up. And this item was inspired by a lot of the comments I got on this video right here when I was taking a deep dive into some Wen tools. Not only did you guys say this item was affordable, but you also mentioned it was high quality and it will help with glue ups. Speaking of glue ups, that reminds me of last April Fool's Day. I replaced my ex chapstick with a tube of glue. I don't think she got the joke though. She never said anything about it. So let's check out this next item made by Wen. So this is the Wen Parallel Clamp Kit. Let's see what we got. So this set comes with 4 parallel clamps in 2 different sizes, and I can already tell by looking at these clamps, these have some features that you don't always see. Before we dig into those features, let's take a look at the basic design of these clamps, as these are 24 and 50-inch clamps. And I always like to measure these, as sometimes you can get a little bit more length than advertised. In this case, the 24-inch clamp goes up to 25 inches, and the 50-inch clamp is right at 50. But you know what? I didn't even really need that tape measure, as this brings us to our first feature that you don't typically see with parallel clamps. If we look at the bar of the clamp, you can see what I'm talking about, as there's actually a scale ruler on there in inch increments. And this scale references the jaw of the clamp without the pad on and appears to be very accurate when we compare it to my tape measure. And that's a feature I don't think I've seen in any other parallel clamp except for Jet. Let me know in the comments if you know of some others. Speaking of other clamps, let's compare this clamp to my other 3 parallel clamps that I have in my shop. And you can see the design is quite similar. From Bremen to Jorgensen to Bessie to Wen, all of these have a similar structure. And the width of the jaws on these clamps with pads on is just about the same for all 4 clamps, being at about 2 inches wide. But the throat depth is a different story, as most of these other clamps are 4 inches or less, but this one's about 4 1/4. And each one of these clamps comes with 3 accessories. Let's take a look at those. The first 2 accessories are the workpiece support clips. These easily slide onto the bar of the clamp and can be adjusted back and forth exactly where you need them. The next accessory is an adjustable clamp foot. This slides right onto the bar and can be tightened down with a little knob on the side. And this really provides all the stability you need to hold your clamp in place. Now let's take a look at the grip of the clamp. As you can see, it's got a soft rubber handle that's very similar to my other clamps and feels very nice in your hand as you're turning it. And you may or may not have noticed that little orange hole in the grip, and this brings us to our next feature, which I've never seen in any other parallel clamp. This hole is made so you can place a screwdriver into it to give you just a little bit more torque when tightening down your clamp. And the clamping pressure with this clamp really is amazing, with it rated at 1,700 pounds and max at 2,000. Now all this is great, but what makes this a clamping kit? As the box clearly says it's a kit. Well, to understand that, we need to dive into our second box. So inside the second box, you're going to find a variety of different types of accessories. And this includes 4 framing blocks as well as 4 adjustable bench dogs. First off, let's take a look at one of those framing blocks. You'll notice that there's 2 intersecting slots at 2 different depths. And it's these slots that allow you to stack your clamps, which we'll do in a moment. You'll also notice there's 4 holes on the corner of each one of these blocks, and these are so you can permanently mount these blocks to any tabletop surface, which is great for having repeatability or even having a permanent glue-up station. But what if you want something just a little less permanent? Well, that's where the bench dogs come into play. These are 3/4 inch bench dogs with screws on the top, and they have 3 different length configurations, as these dogs can screw into each other and have lengths of 5/8, 1 1/4, and 2 inches. And there's 2 pieces you can screw these dogs into. If we take those framing blocks and turn them around, you can see there's a screw hole on the very bottom. By screwing the dog into the framing block, you can slide it right into a bench dog hole, giving you tons of support for your clamps during glue up. But that's not the only place you can screw these dogs. Because if we look underneath the adjustable clamp stand that came with the clamps, you can see there's a screw hole as well. And just like with the framing blocks, you can slide this adjustable foot into a bench dog hole to give support to your clamps. And lastly, just like with most parallel clamps, these can not only be used as a clamp, but also a spreader. Simply slide the adjustable foot off, remove the jaw, and place it in the opposite direction. And just like that, you have an easily reconfigured spreader. Now that we've taken a look at all the features of this kit, let's go over to the assembly table and test this thing out. First off, I'll take my framing blocks and place them in the approximate location of where the intersection will be for the clamps. And here I'm just making sure that the deeper notches are aligned and facing the length of the glue up. And now that those are in place, I can add my 2 50-inch clamps. And you can see how the bars of these clamps sit completely flush with the intersection for the smaller clamps. And with the 50-inch clamps in place, I can now add the 24. And by just adding a couple of the support clips, you can see how wonderfully this comes together. Well, this is a pretty nice little kit, and I'm super pleased with how it comes together. And I'm really excited to see this thing in action on some future glue-ups, but we've got another tool to take a look at, so let's get into it. So our next tool of the day is all about keeping our shop clean. One of the most common ways that I get rid of all the sawdust in my shop is by using a leaf blower. You know, I got fired from a leaf blower factory a few years back. They said every time somebody used the leaf blower that I made and pointed it above their waist, it would just blow up. This makes quick work of getting rid of all that sawdust and debris and getting it outside of my shop. But one thing I don't like about this leaf blower is it's just a little bit too big and clunky. And that's exactly why I purchased this next item. This is the Ryobi 18-volt Workshop Blower. Let's check it out. So inside the box, you're going to get two items, the blower itself along with an extension hose. The hose is easily attached by sliding it onto the blower and turning it to the right. Now that I have this thing assembled, let's compare it to my original leaf blower. And this is where you can really see that size difference, as this little guy looks like a toy and is only 20 inches long. But don't let the size of this little guy fool you, as everything I've read about this blower is that it packs a powerful punch. Now I purchased the tool only, but this thing runs on an 18-volt Ryobi battery. Let's slide that battery into the base of the tool so that we can take a look at some of its features. First off, let's take a look at the handle. As you can see, this is a 3-speed blower and you can hear the difference between each setting. And that third setting is quite powerful, with speeds up to 160 miles per hour or 100 CFM. Not only that, but you can also control the power within those levels. And that's because this blower has a variable speed trigger. You can control the rate at which air flows through the blower by depressing the trigger. And it's this blower's compact design and powerful motor that I think make this an excellent addition for any workshop. Well, that's going to wrap up our video today. I know this video was a little bit different without having a theme between all the tools, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll have to say I'm quite pleased with every tool we've taken a look at, which doesn't always happen. Well, once again, thanks so much for joining me today, and if you haven't already, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video. It truly does help out this woodworking channel. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you check out my website, FlynnDoggWoodwork.com. If you'd like to support this channel further, check out my channel memberships. Until next time, take care as always. All right, so what's the difference between a blind hunter and a constipated owl? Well, a blind hunter shoots but can't hit, and a blind owl hoots but can't shit. Come on, that was good. How about this one? What do you call a wet baby owl? A moist owlette. You like this one? Where did the drunk owl go? Alcoholics Anonymous. How about this one? Why didn't the Mexican archer shoot his bow? He didn't have an arrow. All right, here's my last one. I didn't think the doctor could fix my bowed legs, but I stand corrected.